Everyone thought the husband had already won. His posture was relaxed, his voice steady. But as the judge read through the documents, the wife slowly lifted her eyes to meet his. In that silent stare, the truth shifted, and the courtroom felt it instantly. For months, the narrative had been meticulously crafted. She was the unstable one, the spendthrift, the emotionally absent partner who let their dream life crumble. The evidence, all neat binders and forensic financial trails presented by her husband's sharp lawyer, painted a portrait of a failed wife. The judge's sympathies were leaning, the gavel of judgment poised to fall in his favor, granting him the lion's share of their empire and severing her from their children. He had the documents, the receipts, the cold, hard data. But she had the truth, a truth that was about to walk through those heavy oak doors and shatter his perfectly constructed facade. This is the moment where everything changes. This is the story of broken vows and a battle for justice, where the most powerful evidence isn't a paper, but a person. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and comment where you are watching from. The air in the courtroom was thick with the scent of polished wood, old paper, and a sterile, bureaucratic hope that had long since curdled inside me. I could feel the weight of every gaze, the judge's weary impatience, the spectator's voracious curiosity, my lawyer Linda's tense, supportive anxiety beside me. But most of all, I felt the weight of his. David. My husband of 12 years, seated across the vast, echoing space, looked like a man already savoring his victory. His posture was a study in relaxed confidence, one arm draped casually over the back of his chair. He'd worn a simple, impeccably tailored navy suit, a touch more somber than his usual power dressing, a visual cue of a responsible man burdened by regret. His voice, when he'd spoken earlier, had been a steady, reasonable baritone, calibrated to inspire trust. It was a masterful performance. Judge Morrison's glasses were perched on the end of his nose as he sifted through the latest binder. Financial Exhibit D, the rustle of each page was a gunshot in the quiet. This was the narrative David had built, brick by evidentiary brick, over the last 6 months of proceedings. The story of Alina, the unstable wife. The narrative was so complete, so drowning in paper trails and expert testimony, that I sometimes felt I was watching a biopic of a stranger. A destructive, hysterical stranger who was ruining the life of a good man. I let my eyes drift from the judge's frowning face to David. He was studying his own hands, a faint, patient smile playing on his lips. He was the picture of a man who had done the difficult, necessary thing. That's when I lifted my eyes fully to meet his. Not a glance, but a direct, silent stare. I poured every ounce of the truth I knew, the hidden, gaslit, manipulated truth into that look. I didn't glare. I didn't plead. I simply held him in my gaze and let the reality of what he was, of what he had done, flow from me. For a fraction of a second, his eyes met mine. The practiced serenity flickered. A microspasm twitched near his left eye. He looked away first, a slight, almost imperceptible adjustment of his tie. And in that silent exchange, something intangible shifted in the room. The energy changed. It was as if the carefully controlled atmosphere he'd manufactured suddenly developed a crack. The courtroom felt it instantly. A few jurors sat up straighter, Linda's pen stopped its frantic scratching, and even Judge Morrison paused his reading to glance over his glasses between us. But the moment passed. The law runs on documents, not on gut feelings, and the documents were all his. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Morrison said, addressing David's lawyer, a silver-haired barracuda named Arthur Thorne. "Your client's presentation of the financial discrepancies is thorough. Proceed." Thorne stood, a slow, predatory uncoiling. "Thank you, Your Honor. The pattern is regrettably clear and consistent." He launched into a summary I knew by heart. The unexplained withdrawals from our joint account, always timed just after David had transferred his monthly allowance to my personal account, an allowance he'd insisted on for budgeting purposes years ago. The series of luxury purchases, a Chanel handbag, Cartier earrings, a statement necklace from BVL Gari, all on a credit card in my name. Receipts were projected on a screen. Dates, amounts, my name in stark black and white. "Ms. Chen," Thorne said, turning his benign smile toward me. It was the smile of a dentist about to drill. "During your testimony, you claimed you never made these purchases, that you were, in fact, a victim of identity theft, yet you filed no police report. You made no attempt to dispute these charges with the credit card company. Why is that? My mouth was dry. I was going to, but I was overwhelmed, and I was afraid. Afraid, Thorne echoed, injecting just the right amount of puzzled concern. Afraid of what? The anonymous thief, or afraid your husband would discover your secret spending? Objection, Linda said, but her voice lacked force. We'd been over this. My reasons sounded feeble even to my own ears. Sustained. But answer the premise, Ms. Chen, Judge Morrison said, not unkindly, but with a weariness that suggested he'd heard every excuse in the book. I was afraid he would use it against me, I whispered, the microphone picking up the tremor. That he would see it as proof I was irresponsible, out of control. The truth was more complex, a toxic soup of shame, of years of being told I was bad with money, of having my confidence eroded so slowly I didn't notice the canyon it had left behind until I was standing on the edge. Thorne moved on, a chess player advancing a protected piece. He called David's business partner, Mark. Mark, with his sad eyes and firm handshake for David, testified to David's unwavering integrity and his concern for me during my difficult spells. He mentioned seeing me at a company gala once, looking distracted and unhappy. It was a masterpiece of damning with faint concern. Then came the family friend, Susan, a woman who'd shared barbecues with us. She spoke of David as a devoted, hands-on father who always put his family first. Then, leaning forward with confidential regret, she said, "We were all so worried when Alina started on those new anxiety medications. David was bearing the brunt of it, trying to keep everything stable for the children." She made it sound like I was popping pills and seeing ghosts. The medication was a low-dose SSRI my GP prescribed for situational anxiety after my father died. A fact David had comforted me about at the time and was now weaponizing. The worst was the audio. Thorne played a clip, my voice shrill and ragged, screaming, "I can't take this anymore, you're suffocating me." Then a loud, muffled thump. David's voice, calm and wounded. "Alina, please, you're scaring the children." The clip ended. The courtroom was dead silent. I felt nauseous. The truth was that the thump was me slamming a kitchen cabinet after I'd found the third tracking app on my phone. The suffocating was about his constant surveillance. The children were at school, but the edited clip told a story of a violent, unhinged woman and a calm, victimized husband. After that, David took the stand again for a brief redirect. His voice was heavy with sorrow. "I loved my wife," he said, looking directly at the judge, avoiding me. "I still care for her deeply. This is the last thing I wanted. But when the emotional turbulence started affecting the children, when the financial recklessness threatened our family's security, I had to act. For their sake." He was painting a portrait of a reluctant hero, forced into this battle to protect his innocent kids. The mention of the children was the knife twist. Linda saw me tense. She put a steadying hand on my arm. Our case felt like a sandcastle against Thorne's tidal wave of documentation and manipulation. My testimony had been emotional, messy, a jumble of feelings and patterns that were hard to articulate under Thorne's surgical cross-examination. David's was a spreadsheet set to music. When we broke for recess, the atmosphere was decided. The reporters in the back were already framing their headlines. "Tech executive prevails in bitter divorce. Wife's spending spree sinks case." David walked out surrounded by his team, a general leaving the field of a successful skirmish. Back on the bench, Judge Morrison shuffled his notes. He let out a long sigh that seemed to deflate the entire room. "Counselors," he began, his voice gravid with conclusion, "I have reviewed the testimonies and the submitted evidence with great care. The financial irregularities presented by the respondent are compelling and concrete. The testimony regarding Ms. Chen's state of mind, while concerning, is not sufficiently countered by the petitioner's own account, which remains, regrettably, anecdotal and lacking in substantiation." Each word was a nail in the coffin of my future. My chest tightened. Anecdotal. My life, my pain, was an anecdote. Linda's hand clenched into a fist on the table. "Given the weight of the evidence presented," Judge Morrison continued, "and the primary concern of this court being the stability and welfare of the minor children involved, I am inclined to view the respondent's position with considerable favor. Unless there is anything of a substantive, procedural nature, I am prepared to hear closing arguments." It was over. The court had taken his side. The legal machinery had processed David's false facts and was about to stamp them with the seal of truth. I looked at David. This time he met my gaze, and in the depths of his cool, gray eyes I saw it, not just victory but vindication. He hadn't just won, he had been proven right in the eyes of the world. The narrative was now official record. I was the woman he had always told me I was. A crushing despair, colder than any I'd felt before, settled in my bones. I had lost my husband, my home, my reputation, and now I was about to lose the only thing that truly mattered: my children. The silence after Judge Morrison's words was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was the silence of a verdict before the gavel falls, of a life being dismantled with judicial approval. My vision tunneled, the expensive wood paneling of the courtroom blurring into a sepia smear. Linda's hand was on my forearm, her grip tight, a tether to a reality I was rapidly dissociating from. I could hear her breathing, short and sharp, as she mentally scrambled for a procedural lifeline, a delay anything. Across the aisle, Arthur Thorne was permitting himself a small, professional smile as he organized his notes for his triumphant closing argument. David had allowed his posture to relax fully now, one ankle resting on the opposite knee, a man waiting for the final formality. "Your Honor," Linda's voice cut through the heavy air, sharper than I expected. She stood, her chair scraping back. "If it pleases the court, there is one matter of procedure." Judge Morrison's eyebrows lifted over his glasses, a clear signal of impatience. "Ms. Rivera, I believe the evidentiary phase is concluded. You had ample opportunity." "This is not a matter of evidence we possessed, Your Honor," Linda said, her voice gaining strength. "It is a matter of a witness who has just come forward, last night, after seeing the media coverage of this trial." A low murmur rippled through the spectator benches. Thorne was on his feet instantly. "Objection, Your Honor. This is a blatant attempt to delay these proceedings with last-minute, unvetted testimony. The petitioner has had months to discover and disclose witnesses. This is highly prejudicial and improper." "The witness only became aware of her material relevance upon seeing the specific allegations against my client on the news last evening," Linda countered, turning to face the judge fully. "She contacted our office directly. Her testimony directly contradicts and explains key evidence submitted by the respondent. It goes to the heart of fraud upon the court." The word fraud landed like a physical blow. Judge Morrison's eyes narrowed. He was a man who disliked disorder, but he disliked being manipulated even more. The seed of doubt, that tiny crack from my silent stare, perhaps still lingered. He studied Linda, then Thorne, who was flushed with indignant anger. "The identity of this witness?" Judge Morrison asked, his tone neutral. "Maya Reed, Your Honor, formerly an administrative assistant at Chentech Innovations, the respondent's company." At the mention of the name, a subtle, cold ripple seemed to pass through David. The relaxed ankle came off his knee and planted itself firmly on the floor. He didn't turn, but his head tilted a fraction, as if tracking a distant, unexpected sound. I stared at Linda, bewildered. Maya Reed, I had never heard that name. "This is outrageous," Thorne spluttered. "A disgruntled former employee with an axe to grind. Your Honor, this cannot be allowed." "I will hear the witness," Judge Morrison said decisively. "But Ms. Rivera, be advised that I will be scrutinizing both relevance and credibility with extreme care. If this is a fishing expedition, it will reflect very poorly. Call your witness." The bailiff was sent. The few minutes it took for the doors at the back of the courtroom to open felt like an eternity suspended in glass. Every eye was fixed on those doors. David had turned to Thorne, speaking in a rapid, urgent whisper, his previous composure replaced by a visible, tight-jawed tension. Thorne nodded, scribbling notes, but even he looked unsettled. Then she entered. Maya Reed was younger than I'd imagined, perhaps late 20s, dressed in a simple, well-pressed navy sheath dress that spoke of professionalism, not theatrics. She wasn't looking at the crowd or at David. Her eyes were fixed forward on the judge, her steps measured. She was sworn in, her voice clear and steady. As she sat in the witness box, she finally glanced my way. There was no smile, no nod of reassurance, just a brief, sober meeting of eyes that held an unsettling depth of understanding. Linda began, her tone deliberately calm, building a foundation. "Ms. Reed, please state your former position at Chentech Innovations." "I was an administrative assistant in the Operations and Logistics Department, reporting ultimately to the Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Aris." "And how long were you employed there?" "Just over 2 years. I resigned 3 weeks ago." "Why did you resign?" Maya took a slow breath. "Because the nature of the work I was being asked to perform for Mr. Chen became ethically untenable." Thorne shot up. "Objection, Foundation, calls for a conclusion." "Sustained. Stick to the facts, Ms. Rivera," Judge Morrison warned, but he was leaning forward, his chin resting on his steepled fingers. "Let's talk about the work then," Linda said. "What were your primary duties?" "Standard administrative support. Scheduling, managing vendor contracts for office supplies, coordinating travel, processing departmental invoices." "And did any of your duties fall outside the standard scope?" "Yes. Approximately 18 months ago, I was assigned a secondary, discrete project. I was told it was a sensitive matter for Mr. Chen, separate from his main corporate duties. I was instructed to handle all logistics for a residential property." "A residential property? An apartment?" "Yes, a condominium in the Avalon Tower. The lease and all utilities were under an LLC named Greystone Holdings." "And who instructed you to do this?" "The instructions were channeled through Mr. Aris, the COO, but they originated from Mr. David Chen. I communicated directly with him via a dedicated, secure email channel for this project." Linda approached the clerk and entered a new exhibit into evidence, a printed chain of emails. "Are these the emails, Ms. Reed?" Maya glanced at them. "Yes, these are the ones I forwarded to my personal account as a safeguard." Thorne was objecting constantly now, but the judge was overruling him, his interest fully captured. The emails were mundane but damning. Maya confirming furniture delivery for Unit 412, Maya setting up internet service, Maya arranging for a bi-weekly cleaning service, all paid from a Chentech departmental account labeled Special Projects. "So you furnished and maintained an apartment for Mr. Chen," Linda summarized. "Objection, assumes the apartment was for Mr. Chen," Thorne yelled. "Withdrawn," Linda said smoothly. "Ms. Reed, what, if anything, did you understand this apartment to be used for?" "I was told it was for high-value client hospitality and confidential corporate retreats." "I see. And did your duties for this project extend beyond the apartment itself?" Maya's gaze flickered to David for the first time. He was staring at the table before him, his face a pale, stony mask. "Yes," she said, her voice lowering slightly. "On several occasions, Mr. Chen would send me specific purchase requests for luxury items." A new electric tension crackled in the room. Linda picked up a remote and the screen lit up again. This time, it displayed not the credit card receipts, but internal Chentech emails. "Can you read the highlighted request, Ms. Reed?" Maya cleared her throat. "Maya, please source the Chanel Classic flat bag in black caviar, gold hardware, medium size. Use the preferred vendor. Have it sent to the usual P.O. box. Confirm receipt, DC." "And this one. The Cartier Trinity earrings in rose gold. Standard delivery protocol, DC." Item by item, she read the emails that mirrored the very receipts Thorne had paraded as evidence of my profligacy. The BVL Gari necklace, the Laubautin shoes, my size, always my size, ordered by David, processed by Maya, delivered to a blind box, and the physical receipts, she explained, were then handed to David in interoffice envelopes. "And where are these items now?" Linda asked, though the question was rhetorical. "I have no idea. I only handled the purchasing and logistics. I never saw the items after they were delivered." The truth was detonating in slow motion. The identity theft wasn't a random criminal act. It was a surgical internal operation. David had been the architect, Maya, his unwitting builder. He hadn't just framed me, he had meticulously manufactured the evidence, spending company money to do it. The final blow was still to come. Linda's voice softened, drawing the room in closer. "Ms. Reed, did you ever have occasion to visit this apartment at the Avalon Tower yourself?" "Once, about 4 months ago. A courier delivered a package requiring a direct signature to the unit. The usual contact wasn't answering. Mr. Aris told me to go and sign for it myself as it was time-sensitive." "And what did you see when you arrived?" Maya's composure wavered for the first time. She clasped her hands together in her lap. "I knocked. Mr. Chen opened the door. He was very angry to see me. He took the package and told me to leave immediately." "Did you see inside the apartment?" "Yes, briefly before he closed the door." She paused, gathering herself. It didn't look like a client hospitality suite. There were no guest amenities. It looked like an office, a command center. There were multiple computer monitors on a large desk. Blueprints were pinned to a wall, and on another wall there was a large timeline chart. A timeline chart of what? Maya looked directly at me, her eyes filled with a profound apology. It had photographs of Alina, public photos, social media photos, and there were dates, milestones. It mapped out everything. Legal filings, financial cutoffs, school events for the children. It was a strategy map. Her voice dropped to a horrified whisper. It was a war plan. The gasp in the courtroom was audible. The judge's mouth had fallen slightly open. Thorne was on his feet, shouting about hearsay, speculation, fantasy. But the foundation had been laid with emails and purchase orders. The narrative was irrevocably shattered. David finally moved. He turned to Thorne, his face ashen, his lips moving soundlessly. The perfect, victimized husband was gone, replaced by a man whose hidden architecture had just been exposed to the light. And in that exposure, the entire case, the entire history of our marriage, was reborn in an instant. The court had taken his side, until one witness spoke up. And now, everything was different. The silence after Maya's final word was absolute, a vacuum that sucked all the sound and pretense from the room. It was broken by Arthur Thorne's voice, but it wasn't the confident baritone from before. It was strained, a high-wire act of damage control. "Your Honor, this is fantastical. This witness is clearly fabricating a melodramatic story. A war room? This is the stuff of television dramas, not a court of law." But Judge Morrison wasn't looking at Thorne. He was staring at David, whose face had lost all its blood, leaving behind a waxen mask of shock. The mask was fissuring at the edges around the eyes, where a frantic calculation had replaced the calm certainty. The judge's gaze was like a physical weight. "Mr. Chen," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "I think it is time you return to the stand, right now." There was no polite suggestion in it. It was a command. The bailiff stepped forward almost imperceptibly. David stood, his movements stiff, robotic. He walked the short distance to the witness box as if navigating a minefield. He avoided looking at me, at Maya, at anyone. He retook the oath, his voice a dry rustle. Linda stood for the cross-examination, but it wasn't a cross anymore. It was a dissection. She didn't raise her voice. She just began with the emails. "Mr. Chen, are these communications from your secure company server to Maya Reed authentic?" He swallowed. "They appear to be." "Did you, or did you not, instruct Ms. Reed to purchase a Chanel handbag, Cartier earrings, and a BVL Gari necklace?" I may have, for client gifts, for corporate incentives." "In your wife's exact sizing?" A beat of silence. A coincidence, a common size. "Did you have these items delivered to a P.O. box and then collect the physical receipts?" "For security, high-value items." "And then, did you present those same receipts in this courtroom as evidence of your wife's reckless personal spending?" His lawyer objected, but it was a weak, perfunctory sound. David didn't answer. He just stared at his hands, which were clenched together so tightly the knuckles were bone-white. Linda moved on, a surgeon excising the next tumor. "The apartment, Mr. Chen, the Avalon Tower, is at leased by an LLC called Greystone Holdings." "Yes." "Is Greystone Holdings funded or controlled by you or your company?" It's a separate entity, funded by the Special Projects account at Chentech. No answer. And when Ms. Reed delivered a package there, what was on the walls? Was it decorated as a client retreat, or was it an office? It's a multi-use space, he whispered. Was there a timeline chart with your wife's photograph on it? Thorne was on his feet again, shouting about harassment, but the judge silenced him with a look. Answer the question, Mr. Chen. David's head lifted. For a fleeting second, his eyes met mine. In them, I didn't see the villain from Maya's testimony or the composed performer from earlier. I saw a cornered animal, and beneath that, a terrifying, bottomless void of entitlement that had been scratched. The mask was not just off, it was shattered. It was for legal strategy, he finally said, the words hollow. To organize my thoughts. A war plan, Mr. Chen? Linda asked, her voice dripping with a disdain she no longer needed to hide. Objection. Sustained, but the witness may answer the characterization, Judge Morrison said, his eyes like flint. David said nothing. His silence was the loudest confession of all. What followed was a legal unraveling that happened at breathtaking speed. Judge Morrison recalled the financial expert and demanded to know, based on this new testimony, if funds could have been diverted to create this false spending trail. The expert, now pale and nervous, stammered that it was highly possible, given the described internal controls. The character witnesses, Mark and Susan, were brought back in. Under Linda's newly empowered questioning, their testimony crumbled. When David spoke of his wife's difficulties, did he ever mention he was secretly buying jewelry in her name? Mark admitted, shamefaced, that he had only heard David's side. Susan broke down, whispering, "He said she was unstable. He said we had to support him for the kids' sake. I believed him, we all believed him." The audio clip was replayed. Linda had already summoned a sound engineer as a rebuttal witness. In 5 minutes, the engineer pointed out the jarring, digital cut in the audio waveform just before the thump, suggesting critical context had been removed. "This is consistent with selective editing," he stated plainly. The entire architecture of David's case was exposed as a meticulously constructed lie. The evidence wasn't just countered, it was inverted, turned back on him like a weapon. The stable father was a schemer. The victim was the architect of the victimization. The concern was predation. When Judge Morrison finally called for closing arguments, Thorne was a shell of its former self, a mumbled series of technicalities about burden of proof and witness credibility that rang utterly hollow. Linda's, however, was a concise, powerful symphony of outrage. She spoke of a profound and calculated breach of marital good faith, of evidence not just hidden, but manufactured, of a campaign of psychological abuse weaponized through the court system itself. She didn't ask for justice. She declared that justice, now knowing the truth, had no other choice. The judge didn't retire to chambers. He delivered his verdict from the bench, his words measured, grave, and utterly damning. "This case," he began as a seemingly straightforward dissolution plagued by marital discord and financial mistrust. It has revealed itself to be something far more troubling, a deliberate, sophisticated attempt to defraud this court and to inflict grievous emotional and financial harm upon the petitioner. He looked directly at David. "Mr. Chen, your conduct has been manipulative, deceptive, and demonstrates a fundamental lack of integrity that shakes the very foundations of this proceeding." He awarded me the marital home, free and clear. He assigned me 70% of the liquid assets, citing the hidden expenditures and fraud upon the estate. He pierced the corporate veil of Greystone Holdings, awarding me its value. He granted me primary physical custody of our children, ordering a forensic child psychologist's evaluation before David could be granted any unsupervised visitation, stating, "Parental judgment of this nature is, in this court's view, fundamentally compromised." He issued a permanent restraining order based on the predatory and premeditated nature of the respondent's planning. Finally, he did something that made David flinch as if struck. Furthermore, the court is referring the transcripts and evidence of this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation into potential charges of perjury, subornation of perjury, and falsification of business records. It was over. The gavel fell with a final, sharp crack that echoed in the stunned silence. David was immediately surrounded by Thorne and a junior associate, their heads bent together in frantic, hushed conference. He didn't look at me again. The man who had entered the courtroom as a conquering hero left as an indicted pariah, shoulders hunched against the weight of his own unmasking. I sat there numb. The victory was so vast, so complete, it felt unreal. It wasn't joy that flooded me, but a profound, trembling relief, as if a colossal weight I'd been carrying for years had been suddenly vaporized. Linda was squeezing my shoulder, her eyes bright with tears of vindication. "You're free, Alina," she whispered. "It's done." People milled around, reporters buzzing, but it all felt distant. My focus narrowed to a single point, getting air. I needed to be outside. I walked out of the courtroom, through the bustling corridor, and pushed through the heavy brass doors into the late afternoon light. The sun was warm on my face. I took a deep, shuddering breath, filling lungs that had felt compressed for a decade. The sounds of the city, cars, distant sirens, the chatter of people, were not a cacophony but a symphony of normalcy, a world moving forward, a world I was finally allowed to re-enter. That's when I saw her, standing off to the side by a stone planter looking unsure. Maya. She was hugging herself, watching the people stream out of the courthouse. I walked over to her. She tensed, preparing for anger, for hysterical gratitude, for something messy. I felt none of those things. I stopped before her and simply met her gaze. The words that came out were calm, clear, and from a place of strength I didn't know I still possessed. "Thank you for your courage," I said. "You gave me back my name." She blinked, and a single tear traced a path down her cheek. She nodded, unable to speak. It wasn't a friendship born in that moment, but a sacred understanding between two people who had seen the same hidden monster. I turned and walked toward the parking garage, my heels clicking a steady, firm rhythm on the pavement. The legal battle was over, but the rest of my life was beginning. I thought of my children, of tucking them into their own beds in our home tonight. I thought of the empty space in the closet where his things had been. I thought of the terrifying, exhilarating blank page of tomorrow. They said the court took his side, and for a while it did. It saw the documents, heard the performance, and believed the lie. But the truth doesn't need a lawyer. It doesn't need a perfect performance. It just needs one brave person to speak its name. And when it finally speaks, it echoes forever. The echo now was the sound of my own footsteps, walking away, whole at last.